On this video, I'm going to explain how to connect to the CEESCOPE and echosounder, and this will be using the network connection through the Ethernet cable, which is the typical way the echosounders are connected to the acquisition computer. So this is the first stage in setting up the system before you start using the hydrographic software, and that is where oftentimes the trouble arises especially if people aren't used to using a network system. So the first thing to do is get the echosounder on the network so we can access the data in the hydrographic software. And this process also applies to the CEESCOPE Lite echosounder that's connected to the shore computer when you're using the USB with the C-Link radio module. In that case, the C-Link is connected to the acquisition computer using Ethernet cables, and so the process is exactly the same. So this is for the CEESCOPE C-Echo echosounders with the Ethernet direct connection and the USB echosounder with the C-Link module. So the first thing to do is turn on the echosounder and plug the Ethernet cable output into the LAN port of the acquisition computer. And what's going to happen is here down in the bottom right there will be a Ethernet connection recognized, and it'll try and work out what it is. We'll be looking for the internet, which it won't find, but we will have the device will be recognized. And this is the CEESCOPE echosounder, the CEESCOPE or C-Echo echosounder, and it needs to be turned on. So nothing's going to happen if the echosounder isn't powered up. So the first thing to do is go into the network and internet settings and set the IP address of the computer. So this can be a little bit confusing here. We're not setting the IP address of the CEESCOPE. The IP address of the CEESCOPE is set in the CEESCOPE. What we're doing is we're changing the IP address of the laptop or the tablet, or in this case it's a desktop, to match the IP address of the CEESCOPE. If the two devices aren't on the same network, then they're not going to communicate. They need to have an individual IP address. They cannot have the same IP address. If they have the same IP address, they are on the same network, so they may work briefly, but then there'll be, at some point, there'll be a failure and the equipment will stop communicating. But that can be a tricky error because it will work for a while. So you do need to be very diligent when you set the IP address. So what we're doing here in this dialog is we're setting the IP address of the laptop or the computer that's connected to the CEESCOPE. And depending on the version of Windows you have, it's going to be different how you look in here. But what you're looking for is the Ethernet connection. And you'll see unidentified network, and there'll be a few different types of menus for that. You can go over here to change adapter options, and this takes you to an older Windows type menu. This one is a little bit more common. And so here we can see Ethernet and unidentified network. So when you have the CEESCOPE or the C-Echo plugged in, this is what you're going to see. And right now it won't work because the typical setup for a computer is the Ethernet port has an IP address that is not static, so it's actually managed by the device that is providing its internet source or router essentially. So what we need to do is go and change that. So we can right click on the Ethernet and we're looking for properties. And down here, you'll see the Ethernet properties. And you may become pretty familiar with this dialog here. And what you're looking for is this Internet Protocol version 4, TCP IPv4. And then you have to hit properties again. And this takes you to the menu where you can set the IP address of the Ethernet port in the laptop. So what we're going to do is change it from the default, which is always obtain an IP address automatically. And the CEESCOPE that it's connected to is not going to give your computer an IP address, so we need to tell it what to use. So here, we're going to put it on the CEESCOPE network, which is always 192.168.2. And the last three digits here are where you can put the specific identifier for your device. And the CEESCOPE by default is 192.168.2.1. So what you can't do in here is put 1. It's a mistake that does happen, quite frequently, and that will be putting the laptop on the same IP address as the CEESCOPE, and it may work for a bit, but then it's going to fall over. So what you have to do is put it on the same network but use a different number at the end. So I always do 10 for the laptop. If you're using the CEESCOPE Lite with a CUSV, then you do have fewer choices. You can use any number, actually from 1 to 255 I think at the end here, but what you can't do is you can't use 1, you can't use 2, you can't use 20, 21 or 5. And those numbers depend on what other hardware you have on the system, but generally speaking, for the USV, don't use 1, 2, 5, 20 or 21. You can use anything else. If you're using the CEESCOPE or the CEESCOPE, so there's no USV in the picture, don't use 1 or 2, but you can use anything else. But I always use 10 for the laptop. And then when you click on this field below, it always pops up with the subnet mask of 255, 255, 255, and that's standard, so you don't need to play around with that. So if we hit OK, now we're not going to see anything really change, but now our laptop has a static IP address that matches a CEESCOPE network. And if we were to open up our hydrographic software and we had our settings all right in hydrographic software, you should see all your data. But before we do that, we're going to run through some tests and also some background information about what might happen here to prevent the data coming through. So one good utility to have, certainly it's worth installing, it's CConnect, or it may be called CEESCOPE Connect utility, right here. And it's a real small utility that allows you to directly connect to the echosounder to view the data on the echosounder through the network. So if I double click on CConnect, you'll get this small dialog box here, and when it first shows up here, the first time you ever use it, these will be empty. So both of these will be blank. And you have to fill it in the first time, and then it's going to remember what your entries were. For connection up here, you have to use a network port. Unless you've got a CEESCOPE that's very, very early, you're always going to be putting V2X here. That's the version of the CEESCOPE. There's very few V1s around, so V2 is what you go for. Host, here, the host is what you're looking at. So what do you actually want to communicate with? And here it's the CEESCOPE. The IP address we've just been talking about for the laptop, that's just the portal, that's just what the data is going through. It's not where it's coming from. So here we put 192.168.2.1 and the port was 1234. And if we hit apply, this is showing us here a duplication of the CEESCOPE main screen. So this is showing us that the network is connected. We are able to communicate with the CEESCOPE, and we don't have any issues on the network. Now, this doesn't mean necessarily that data is being output from the CEESCOPE. This is kind of an important point. This is the way you can access the menus and interface with the echosounder, but it doesn't mean data is coming out in the formats that will be observed, or they will be registered on hydrographic software. Here, this button here is the real-time output button, and if this is toggled off, even though you can see all the data up here, nothing is coming out of the data output port in a format that the software is going to recognize. So don't get confused between the fact you can actually see this data and what's coming out of the echosounder. There really is no reason to turn this off, and the button is in the same place if you look at the actual CEESCOPE itself. There's no reason to turn that off, but be aware this does need to be blue for the data to be seen in the software. Now, the purpose of CConnect is to allow you to remotely change the settings of the echosounder, or some of the settings of the echosounder, from the computer and not opening up the lid of the echosounder. It's not too onerous to use the menus on the echosounder when you're on a man boat, but if you're using the USV and the echosounder maybe 200 yards away, then it's a lot easier to change the settings using this CConnect utility. But you can change the sound velocity, pings per second, and maximum depth is the most important one here. The maximum depth, if you exceed your maximum depth, then you will no longer receive valid sounding. So the most critical setting of all here is the maximum depth. You have to make sure your maximum depth is deeper than the maximum depth you're expecting on your survey. So you can make the changes, hit apply, and those changes are sent to the echosounder. And this is all quite straightforward here. You can change the operating mode of the echosounder, and you can put it in manual and change the transmit and receive characteristics. You can also turn recording on and off from the CConnect utility if you're recording data inside the CEESCOPE or CEECO. But the purpose for the discussion about the software right now is that it's a good way to validate that you have your network connection, for one, and also if you are connected and you're looking at your software and you're not seeing data, the first thing to do is go and open up CConnect and make sure you can see data in CConnect. If you can see data in CConnect, but you can't see data in your software, assuming your software is set properly, then what's going to be happening is the antivirus or firewall on the computer will be activated, and that's preventing the data coming through to the software. The software will be prone to being interfered with by the firewall antivirus. The CConnect is not. So having the CConnect gives you a good indication if you do have any issues with your data of where the problem lies. So if you can't see it on CConnect, your network's not set up correctly. If you can see it on CConnect but you can't see it on HYPACK or Hydromagic, your firewall's probably still on, or you've got antivirus running. Obviously, if you can see it in CConnect and in the software, then you're good. So if you do have an issue where you can't see data in your software, then what you need to do is first thing to do is turn off the firewall. So if we go to the firewall location in the control panel, you'll have to find it. So it's going to look different depending on what type of Windows you have. But Windows Defender Firewall, and this is another common issue where there's no data in the hydrographic software. And what we'll find is the firewalls are on. So to receive data in the hydrographic software, the firewalls need to be off. So the best thing to do is just go in there and turn them all off. And you want to see these warnings that there's no firewalls here, which is what you want to see. Now you can do it in a more advanced fashion if you keep the firewalls on, but you can turn off access to individual programs or turn on access to individual programs in advanced settings. But for now, we'll just deactivate the firewall completely, which you know is going to prevent interference of your data in HYPACK or Hydromagic. So if you don't see data in the software, the first place to go is CConnect. And then if you see data in here, or you can see the connection to the CEESCOPE, then the next place to go is the firewall. After the firewall, if you've got antivirus, you should deactivate that. So now I'm going to explain the connection method to connect to either the CEESCOPE Lite on the USB or the CEESCOPE USB echosounder with a Wi-Fi direct connection. So usually those systems will be using the C-Link shore radio, but instead of the C-Link, a computer with a Wi-Fi card that will have a dual band or 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi can connect directly to the echosounders. Or alternatively, a USB radio dongle can be plugged into the computer or the tablet to connect directly to the echosounder. And so to do that, you have to change the settings of the Wi-Fi adapter. So we already looked at the Ethernet adapter settings, the LAN port, but in this case, the echosounder is going to be connected directly to the computer with its Wi-Fi system. So now you have to find the Wi-Fi settings and change the Wi-Fi IP address for that adapter, just like you did for the Ethernet LAN port on the computer. So the principle is exactly the same. So in this case, we see we have the Ethernet, the LAN port, and the Wi-Fi adapter shown on the control panel. And this will be typical. You'll see the Wi-Fi adapter shown as well as the Ethernet port. So just like the change in the Ethernet settings, we can go in and change the Wi-Fi settings as well. But before we do that, when the CEESCOPE USB or the CUSV, CEESCOPE Lite in the CUSV, those systems have a Wi-Fi access point that's activated, which generates an access point with an ID of C Hydra system. So when it's powered up and everything's running, you can see on any Wi-Fi enabled device that has 5 gigahertz, like your phone or an iPad or anything, you're going to see a network that comes up as C Hydra systems, just like any other regular Wi-Fi network. So you can connect to the C Hydra systems network with anything. Now you could connect it with your phone, but you won't really be able to do anything. Having a phone allows you to see that the network is active, but you can't connect in any meaningful way with the phone. So what we can do is connect with this computer here. Now if I just hit connect, we're going to connect this PC to the C Hydra systems echosounder. In this case it's a CEESCOPE Lite. And we're not going to have any internet connections, so we're going to be seeing that there's no internet connections shown here. But what we will have is an active connection between the computer and the echosounder. And so when this is done connecting, we can adjust the parameters or the settings of the Wi-Fi adapter so we can connect. So it says here no internet. Well, that's fine, and the connection is open. So we're connected here. And just like with the LAN port, the Wi-Fi adapter now has to be set as a static IP address. So usually the IP address are automatically assigned by whatever router system you connect to or the various Wi-Fi networks that you might connect to. But what we need to do this time is that, just like we did for the LAN port, is tell it the fixed IP address. So I can go to this Wi-Fi adapter here, go to properties, and again I can look at IP version 4 and hit properties and type in the IP address. So what I can type in here is 192.168.2, and then here I can't use 1, 2, 5, 20 or 21, and I also can't use 10 because I use 10 for the LAN port on the computer. So you can use 11 or anything else other than those numbers. So it's good to have a consistency in operation here. Maybe you always use 10 for the LAN connection and always use 11 for the Wi-Fi connection if you use that. So then we click here and get the subnet mask and hit OK. So now we have our Wi-Fi network, the Wi-Fi adapter set on a static IP address. And this allows us to communicate with the echosounder just like we can do through the Ethernet cable. And in fact, the Ethernet cable could be plugged in as well. So we have an opportunity here just to go to C Connect, double click on C Connect, and we can open up the C Connect window, and here we're connected to the echosounder. We see everything, but this is coming through the Wi-Fi connection between the CEESCOPE Lite echosounder in this case and the laptop or the computer you use directly with a Wi-Fi connection. So we're not using the C-Link radio, we're using a direct connection. And maybe useful to do this if you've maybe got small areas to survey. You can carry around the laptop without using the short radio. The range is certainly limited. It's limited by the internal Wi-Fi antenna in the laptop, and you can use an external USB radio with a larger antenna that's going to boost the range. Maybe you can get up to 300 meters or so at the maximum. But so it's useful for close in. It's certainly useful if you as a fallback measure or as a contingency. So it's good to know that you can connect to those echosounders, those Wi-Fi enabled echosounders directly with your computer in this manner.